This is St. Louis on the Air from St. Louis Public Radio. I'm Elaine Cha.
If you're going to make them as well as they could possibly turn out, it's best to do it by hand.
For what we wanted to bring to the city, what we wanted to make for ourselves, and the thing that we found most interesting, it needed to be boiled, it needed to be baked on burlap boards.
So people talk a lot about New York-style bagels. What does that mean for you as a bagel maker?
So New York style, I think, would be the same thing as a water bagel, so it just has to do with the boiling process.
In St. Louis's food scene, the current star of the show is arguably the humble bagel. New shops and long lines have led local publications to declare the start of a, quote, bagel renaissance or even a bagel revolution. Whatever you call it, it's simply a great time to be a bagel lover. And that's the subject of the latest issue of Sauce magazine, St. Louis's bagel boom. Here to talk about St. Louis's bagels and why people can't seem to get enough of them, we welcome back to our show Meera Nagarajan, the executive editor of Sauce magazine. Meera, it's great to have you again.
Thank you for having me.
Meera, you start your piece by highlighting what you called a void in St. Louis's bagel scene after last year's closure of the Bagel Factory, which had been open for 50 years. You also raise the question, why does St. Louis have so few dedicated bagel shops? So don't keep us in suspense. Why is it that a food that seems so simple, so hard to find?
Well, I think it's because they're not easy to make, and the environment that if you're making a bagel, the environment you're working with, it's like you have to proof that dough, and then you're having to boil it in this steaming vat of hot water, and then it goes directly into a hot oven. So that environment is a challenging work environment too, I think. And I'm told that if you're going to make them as well as they could possibly turn out, it's best to do it by hand. So you're making everything by hand, each one. So I think that process sounds like it's a barrier to entry.
Yeah. So after all of that has been done with the process, people are making them. What is it that elevates a bagel from good to great?
I think it's partly the dough, what you're doing to process that dough and make sure that that dough is putting out as much flavor as possible. I think the toppings that you're sourcing, what cream cheese you're using, what kind of smoked fishes you're using. I think those kinds of touches really take it to the next level. And I also think that generally, I love a plain toasted bagel. Like, it doesn't even need too much on it. Mm-hmm. So it's like really just, for me, it's all about that dough.
Yeah.
And if it's done, you've got all the different toppings that you prefer, and if the toppings stick and it's got the flavor on there, that's what really, and people have a connection to bagels. Like, if you have gotten bagels from the grocery store when you were a kid, or, it doesn't, people have some sort of a connection to it in the United States. I feel like people love a bagel. So it doesn't take much, but I think that the places that we talked about in this story are really trying to make sure that they're elevating it to the next level.
Mm-hmm. So the latest article that you wrote really dove into the scene here that's burgeoning, and a big focus of the piece is Bagel Union, which soft opened in January and fully opened the next month. Now, people waited outside for hours in February for these bagels, and St. Louis weather is all over the place, so that shows some commitment. And in our studio right now, Bagel Union's come to us in the form of Ted Wilson, co-founder of the shop that's found itself at the center of this current bagel craze. Ted, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Now, it's actually fitting that you're here with Meera from Sauce magazine. Is it true that you debuted your bagels at a Sauce event in 2019?
Yes, it's Saucy Soiree. That summer was our first official debut of bagels. We'd been fooling around with them for several months prior, but that was the first big step out for us.
And what was it that you served?
We served an everything bagel, an everything seasoned bagel that we baked and boiled and baked the traditional way, but on our equipment at Union Loafers, our other restaurant. And excuse me, we served that with some cherry or some sun gold tomatoes that we had gotten from Biver Farms, which is one of our favorite growers here in the area, and some Zingerman's cream cheese, which Zingerman's is a deli in Ann Arbor, Michigan, which is where we look to for a lot of source inspiration on things. But yeah, and little Chervil. Yeah, that's what we served, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, if we fast forward to today, your bagels are now being sold in the thousands. And there were some years before that started happening this winter, about 4 years, in fact. So, Ted, why did it take so long to see these bagel dreams come full circle?
We are slow to process, my business partner and I, and how we interpret our ideas and how we want to bring them to life. Excuse me again. But obviously there was COVID involved. We had signed our lease on this space in 2019, the very end of 2019, and started the design and build-out phase. And then COVID really put a pause on any progress we could make there. And that's really where the longest part of this process, all that time went. But really, by 2019, we knew our base formula for how we wanted to build these bagels, and I'm a little thankful that we had this time. It's a good time to really learn how we want to set up our processes and put things into place. And for such a process-oriented food item, having a little extra time to set up the space has proven to be pretty helpful, because it is a very physically demanding job.
Right. And Meera, you'd mentioned that part of the reason there aren't more places that have like really good bagels is how much work goes into it. And I'd like to hear some of the doughy details of bagel making. And Ted, you've come today with an absolute expert on the craft, and that's Jackie Polcyn, who's the head baker and production manager at Bagel Union. Jackie, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So we're talking about all this work, but what it actually entails, it's kind of hard to imagine. Can you give us a snapshot of your day? So with breakfast being the target, like when do you start making the bagels and what are the steps?
Yeah, no problem. So I usually get to work around 5 or 5:30 in the morning and fire up the equipment. I have like some opening duties that I do just to kind of set up our space and get ready to do the bagels. So it takes about an hour for our oven and boil kettle to get up to temp. And then we really roll into our bake, which is pretty intense after that. So it's anywhere from, I would say, 4 to 6 hours of baking straight, usually a 2 to 3 man team. Mm-hmm. And then we shut that station down, we clean it up, and we go straight into production, which is mixing and shaping all the bagels for the following day's bake.
And when you said the boil, what is the temperature for that?
Oh, it is at a rolling boil, so it's 220 and up.
So it's hot in there.
It's hot.
Yeah.
It's hot and steamy.
So people talk a lot about New York-style bagels. What does that mean for you as a bagel maker?
So New York style, I think, would be the same thing as a water bagel. So it just has to do with the boiling process before it's being baked versus just going straight into a steam-injected oven.
Mm-hmm. Now, the sheer volume of bagels that you're making through this process, not protest, that's what happens if you don't get what you want to eat. It's mind-boggling, right? And Ted had told our producer that the shop is making a couple 1,000 bagels every day, and you mentioned like you're shaping them by hand. How do you get to that number of bagels?
Well, it took a number of weeks and months of us not making enough bagels for us to realize we had to make more.
Okay.
So
you brought on
just continuously climbing upwards.
Yeah. And was it easy to find people to join the team to do that, Ted?
It's never that easy of a process finding people, because you want to find the right people, especially for work that's so labor intensive, and you're really spending a lot of hours with these people in a room. So it's finding the right people is challenging, but I'd say we've been very fortunate.
And what is the total number of employees that you have now?
Oh boy, that's for that restaurant, for that bake team. We now have
We have
6 people on the team.
6 on the bake team.
6
yes.
on the bake team. For a while though, it was a 3-person team.
Oh, wow.
With a mixer, Jackie and myself making all of the bread, all of the bagels, excuse me, and all by hand.
We're talking today about St. Louis's booming bagel scene, and here with us we have Ted Wilson, the co-founder of Bagel Union, Jackie Polcyn, who's Bagel Union's head baker and production manager, as well as Meera Nagarajan, who's the executive editor of Sauce magazine. Ted, I want to go back to the baking part. So before you started in your Bagel Union digs, you were baking bagels in the Union Loafer kitchen. What was that like?
It was challenging. We already have a very packed kitchen at Union Loafers, where we are a sandwich restaurant, a bread bakery, a pizza restaurant, and all out of a 900 square foot room, give or take. So fighting for space is challenging. Adding an entirely new process to that, and that kitchen does not have a range, so boiling water on a little induction burner that you plug in the wall is challenging, and it really is not that fun of a process to do. And part of the reason that drove us to open Bagel Union was the fact that if you're going to do this at all, you have to be all in.
Okay. Now, going all in, you could have gone all in on a St. Louis style bagel. Is there such a thing?
Well, I don't know that there's so much a thing as a St. Louis style bagel, unless we're going to talk about how it's sliced. Or I mean, we could look at how St. Louis Bread Company, now Panera, makes their bagels, which is not by boiling it.
Sure.
And that's more of a bread process in the bake.
Okay. And
sure, we could have done that, but bagels are defined by their process, and for what we wanted to bring to the city, what we wanted to make for ourselves, and the thing that we found most interesting, it needed to be boiled. It needed to be baked on burlap boards in an oven, and it needed to be every bit of what we grew up with at Bagel Factory or Bagelville,
right,
or our experiences in New York City with eating bagels. And yeah, we weren't going to settle for anything less.
Right. So, Jackie, of all the bagels that you're forming, what are the flavors and the styles of bagels that people respond to best?
Oh, man. Well, everything is our best seller, naturally. Cherry Crunch has been a big hit. Cinnamon Raisin's my personal favorite. I would say Salt was a surprisingly hot seller.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Why was it surprising? Because it's so simple?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think the concept's kind of boring, right? But it's a hot seller.
Yeah. What else about the work of making the bagels makes it a labor of love? I mean, you're there many hours. What makes it challenging and yet rewarding?
I would say the physical challenge is definitely present, whether it's the temperature of the room, but also like lifting, 50-pound bags of flour is no small feat. And you're rolling the dough is always, that's intense on your body, whether it's your forearms, your shoulders, your elbows, depending on your height and stature.
Yeah.
So I think that the physicalness of the job is kind of what makes it rewarding to me.
Mm-hmm. And I do remember when Bagel Factory closed, because I live close to there, and I went to go get bagels for the morning, and it was like, we're done. So it was a relief to me, someone looking for bagels, to know that Bagel Union was opening as well as some of the other places. Now, Meera, I want to return to you. We had mentioned that in the cover story that you wrote, there is a focus on Bagel Union, but there are other bagel hotspots that are either on their way or have opened already. So there's the Return of Bagel Factory, ET, we have no idea, Lefty's Bagels in Chesterfield, and I have tried that, and C&B Boiled Bagels. Tell me about this last one.
C&B Boiled Bagels is in Wood River, Illinois, and it's managed by a husband and wife team. They also have a restaurant there called 1929 Pizza and Wine, and it's boiled and baked bagels, and they're doing some interesting things with their cream cheese. They have like a bunch of vegan cream cheese offerings for all their regular cream cheese flavors. They've got like, the classics, the salt, the garlic, everything bagels, but they also have like cheddar jalapeno, and then they also have a cinnamon raisin. And I think they're doing breakfast sandwiches in the morning. So they have like their egg sandwiches with cheese and protein, and they want to have their menu available to vegans and vegetarians as well. So I mean, they're doing great stuff, and Lefty's too. I think the food at Lefty's, the bagels are really great. I love their breakfast sandwiches also, and similar to what Bagel Union is doing, they're both sourcing fish. Smoked fish or lox in for their fish sandwich offerings that are really carefully, thoughtfully sourced and not to be missed.
So you have sampled bagels from all these different places. Ted and Jackie, you're making bagels all the time. What is it that you want to eat, though? What is your favorite bagel, cream cheese, fish, whatever other topping combination?
Jackie, would you like to go first?
My current favorite is cinnamon raisin, just with plain Sierra Nevada cream cheese.
Okay.
I've got to say I eat a salt bagel a day, and this Sierra Nevada cream cheese is to us one of the most exciting pieces of the thing. Forget the bagels. This cream cheese is cultured cream, milk, and salt. It's a very beautiful, simple product, and with a warm bagel, it almost turns to whipped butter.
Wow.
It's incredible.
I'm a recent convert to cream cheese, so I'm definitely going to check that out. Ted Wilson is the co-owner of Bagel Union in Webster Groves, which opened earlier this year, and it's also where you'll find Jackie Polcyn, the shop's head baker and production manager, and Meera Nagarajan is executive editor of Sauce Magazine and the author of Sauce's cover story in its latest issue, St. Louis's Bagel Boom. Thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This episode was produced by Danny Wissentowski.
With audio engineering and podcast design by Aaron Dorr.
Our executive producer is Alex Hoyer.
St. Louis on the Air is a production of St. Louis Public Radio. Understanding starts here.
Our podcast proudly supports St. Louis artists by using music from Life Creative Group.
Do you find yourself regularly listening to episodes of St. Louis on the Air? Suggest us to a friend you think might enjoy our conversations, and leave us a review and rating on Apple Podcasts on the App Store. It's the simplest way to help people discover our show. Thank you.
St. Louis Public Radio is a member-supported service of the University of Missouri St. Louis.
Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association. Missouri produces wood pallets, railroad ties, white oak barrels, hardwood floors, and more. Details on the variety of products made in the state are at choosewood.com.